Some stories just get under your skin. They're not about ghosts or monsters. They're about real things that don't make sense. And the story of Ricky McCormick is one of those. It's a story about a man's strange death and the 2 small pieces of paper found in his pocket. Those papers are covered in a code that nobody, not even the FBI's best, can seem to crack. It's been more than 20 years, the trail is cold, but the notes remain. And they whisper a question that still has no answer. The story starts on June 30th, 1999. A woman in St. Charles County, Missouri, looked out her window and saw something in a cornfield off a dirt road. It was a man's body. The police came. The body had been there for a while, maybe 3 days. It was decomposed. Identifying him wasn't easy, but they eventually figured it out. It was a 41-year-old man named Ricky McCormick. Ricky wasn't a famous person. He wasn't a spy or a criminal mastermind. He was just a guy. He had dropped out of high school but could read and write. He had a few minor criminal charges on his record, but nothing major. He lived a transient life, staying with various relatives. He had health problems, including heart and lung issues. He didn't own a car and got around by bus or by walking. He was unemployed and receiving disability benefits. By all accounts, he was just a regular person living a difficult life on the margin. His family said he was smart, but not in a bookish way. They called him street smart. The mystery wasn't just his death, it was how he died and where he was found. His body was discovered more than 15 miles from where he was last seen. He didn't have a car, so how did he get there? The field was remote, not a place you just stumble into. The official cause of death was listed as undetermined. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no gunshot wounds, no stab wounds. But his family never believed he died of natural causes. Why would a man with health problems walk 15 miles to a remote field to die? It just didn't add up. They suspected he was murdered. But the real puzzle, the thing that elevated this from a sad local story to a national enigma, was found in his pants pockets. 2 small, crumpled pieces of paper. On them were lines of what looked like a secret code. It was a chaotic jumble of letters, numbers, and parentheses. It looked like someone had just typed random characters, but there was a strange rhythm to it, a sense of structure. The local police were stumped. They held onto the notes, hoping they might become relevant later. For years, they sat in an evidence file. The case went cold. Ricky McCormick was just another unsolved death. But in 2011, 12 years after his body was found, the FBI did something unusual. They went public with the notes. They posted pictures of them on their website alongside a request for help. The FBI's own Cryptanalysis and Racketeering Records Unit, or crew, had worked on it. These are the people who break codes for a living. They deal with ciphers from spies, terrorists, and organized crime. And they couldn't make any sense of Ricky's notes. Dan Olson, the chief of the crew, said at the time that they were good at what they do, but they could use some help. He said the notes were their top unsolved case. The fact that the FBI, with all its resources and experts, was publicly asking for amateur sleuths to take a crack at it tells you everything you need to know about how difficult this cipher is. So, what do these notes actually say? Let's look at them. Note 1 is the longer of the 2. It looks something like this, with its original line breaks and strange formatting. TRFXL MNTTRS ETE 5VSENTE. At first glance, it's just a mess. But the more you look, the more patterns you see. The letters NIS ERM, THERE dot T appear a lot. The sequence ends as, or MRNSNS repeats. There are parentheses around certain letter groups like SENSE or FL. There are numbers mixed in. The structure seems deliberate. It doesn't look like someone just randomly banged on a keyboard. This is why the FBI doesn't think it's gibberish. It has the hallmarks of the system, even if it's a completely bizarre one. So, the big question is, can anyone crack it? To answer that, you have to explore the different theories about what the code could be. The first and most obvious theory is that it's a traditional cipher. A substitution cipher is the simplest kind, where each letter stands for another letter. For example, every becomes a Q, every becomes a pork, and P becomes a W, and so on. This is the kind of code you see in puzzle books. The problem is, these are easy to break. Every language has a predictable frequency of letters. In English, lay is the most common letter, followed by TO and so on. So, cryptanalysts just count the letters in the code, find the most common symbol, and guess that it's Li. Then they find the next most common, and guess it's T. It's like a game of Wheel of Fortune. But that doesn't work on Ricky's notes. The letter frequencies don't match any known language. The most common letters in the code are N, S, E, R, M, T. If you try to map these to the most common letters in English, you get nonsense. The structure is also too repetitive. A simple substitution wouldn't create those long repeating strings like NSNS. So it's probably not a simple substitution cipher. What about something more complex, like a visionary cipher? This is a polyalphabetic cipher, which means a single letter in the code can stand for different letters in the original message depending on a keyword. This makes frequency analysis much harder. But even these ciphers have weaknesses and patterns that experts can spot. And, again, the FBI's team, who deal with these all the time, drew a blank. This suggests it's probably not a standard by-the-book cipher of any kind. If it were, it likely would have been solved years ago. This leads to the second and perhaps most popular theory. It's not a formal cipher, it's a personal shorthand. This is a system that Ricky McCormick made up for himself. It might not follow any logical rules that a cryptographer would recognize. The code could be based on phonetics or on abbreviations that only he understood. Think about how you take notes for yourself. You might write MER, MTG A4WJ, instead of tomorrow's meeting is at 4 o'clock with John. You create your own system on the fly. Ricky's notes could be an extreme version of this. His family mentioned that he had used some kind of personal code or shorthand since he was a boy, but nobody ever knew how to read it. They just saw him scribbling in this strange way. If this theory is true, cracking the code becomes almost impossible. We would have to get inside Ricky's head. For example, maybe INB stands for something phonetic, like in see about though. Or maybe meter-seen represents the sounds of a phrase he used often. The letters could represent the first letter of each word in a sentence. D, W, W, B, W, D, N, C, N, T, E. Could be. Don't we be what we don't need to be? It's pure speculation. Without Ricky to explain his logic, we are just guessing. The structure of the notes supports this idea. The lines are short, almost like bullet points or diary entries. He might have been recording thoughts, plans, or things he needed to remember. The repetitive parts, like MR and SNS, could be a separator, like a period or a new line, or maybe a recurring thought or phrase, something like more nonsense, or remember this. The parentheses might be for emphasis, or to separate different ideas. This theory also fits with who Ricky was. He wasn't a trained cryptographer, he was a guy who dropped out of high school. It's more likely he developed his own idiosyncratic system over years of use than that he learned and applied a complex, formal cipher. The code is a reflection of his own mind, his own unique way of processing language. This would make it a dialect in written form, a personal language of one. And that is a cryptographer's worst nightmare. There's no key, no algorithm. The only key was Ricky's brain, and it died with him. Then there's the third theory, it's all just gibberish. Maybe Ricky wasn't writing a message at all, maybe he was just doodling. Perhaps he was mentally unwell or under the influence of something, and the notes are the product of a disorganized mind. People who support this theory point to the almost manic repetition and the lack of any clear breakthrough after years of analysis. If it meant something, surely someone would have found a toehold by now. But the FBI and many amateur sleuths reject this idea. Dan Olson from the crew was firm on this point. He said they were confident that this is not a random system. The notes are too structured. There are clear patterns. Certain combinations of letters appear again and again, while others never appear at all. The line breaks seem intentional. The use of parentheses and numbers seems to have a purpose. Random scribbling doesn't usually have this level of internal consistency. It feels like a language, even if it's one we don't speak. It's like hearing two people talk in a foreign tongue you've never encountered. You don't understand a word, but you know they are communicating. A fourth theory is that the notes aren't a message in the traditional sense, but rather a set of directions or a map. This is particularly interesting given that he was found so far from home. Maybe the notes were instructions on how to get somewhere. The letters could represent terms N for north, S for south, landmarks, or street names. The numbers could be mile markers, bus routes, or addresses. Look at note 2 again. It has things like 26 MLSE and 12 MVSE. This looks a lot like 26 miles and 12 mile. The letters SE could mean southeast. WTSE could be a road, like West Street. If this is the case, the notes could be a route for a drug deal, a meeting, or a trip to pick something up. This would also tie the notes directly to his movements before his death. Maybe he was following these directions and something went wrong. Maybe the person he was supposed to meet is the one who killed him. This theory is compelling, but it has its own problems. If the letters are directions, why are they so convoluted? Why not just write 26 miles SE on Route 74? Why the elaborate system with all the other letters? And if it is a map, it would have to be for the St. Louis area, and so far no one has been able to match the notes to any plausible route that would lead to the cornfield where he was found. A fifth theory is that the notes are a list. They could be a list of names, debts, or transactions. This could explain the repetitive structure, with each line being a new entry. Maybe Purse, VSE, NSC, and SE36 refers to a person. an amount of money $36, and a location. In a criminal context, this could be a ledger of drug deals or illegal bets. This would provide a motive for his murder. If he was keeping records of a criminal enterprise and someone found out, they might have wanted to silence him and get those records. This connects to a detail about Ricky's life. Though he wasn't a major criminal, he was connected to people who were. He might have been a low-level participant or just a witness to something. The notes could have been his insurance policy or just his way of keeping track of things he was involved in. The problem, again, is that we can't tie any of the codes to known individuals, places, or events. It remains pure speculation. The public release of the notes in 2011 created a frenzy of activity online. Websites, forums, and Reddit communities sprang up, all dedicated to cracking the McCormick's cipher. Thousands of people have spent countless hours poring over these two small pages. They've run statistical analyses, created computer programs to test for patterns, and proposed hundreds of different solutions. Some of these attempts are quite creative. One person suggested the code was based on the layout of a chessboard. Another thought it was related to musical notes. Many have tried to decode it phonetically, sounding out the letters to see if they form words. NCBE becomes NCBE, which sounds a bit like NCB. It's a stretch, but it shows the kind of thinking required. A popular online theory proposed by a user on Reddit was based on a complex system of shorthand where letters represented common word pairs or syllables. For example, FR might mean from or for, M might be me or me, and N might be and or in. The letter essays might be a pluralizer, so MRNSNS could be something like my reasons and sons, or more in sense. This user was able to create somewhat plausible, though often grammatically strange, sentences from the notes. But the system had so many rules and exceptions that it was hard to prove. Anyone can create a complex system to make a cipher say what they want it to say. The real test is whether that system can be applied consistently to the whole text and produce a clear, coherent message. So far, no proposed solution has done that. The truth is, all of these theories could be wrong. The real system could be something nobody has even thought of yet. Maybe it's a combination of different methods. Maybe some parts are phonetic, some are abbreviations, and some are true coded letters. Maybe the numbers have a special meaning that modifies the letters around them. The biggest hurdles to cracking the code are fundamental. First, we have a very small sample size. 2 short notes are not a lot of material to work with. In code breaking, the more text you have, the more patterns you can find, and the easier it is to solve. With just a few hundred characters, it's hard to be statistically certain about anything. Second, we have no crib. A crib is a piece of the message that you know or can guess. For example, if you are decoding a military message, you might guess that it contains the word attack or weather. If you can find where that word fits in the cipher, you can use it to unlock the rest of the message. We have no idea what Ricky might have been writing about. Was it about money? His health? A woman? A threat? We have no starting point, no toehold to begin our climb. And third, the author is dead. This is the most significant problem. Ricky McCormick can't give us any clues. He can't tell us if we're on the right track. He can't explain the logic of the system. Any other codebreaker, like the Zodiac Killer, at least created their ciphers to be solved. They wanted to taunt the police or the public. There was an intended recipient. But Ricky's notes might have been for his eyes only. He may have never intended for anyone else to read them. And if that's the case, he would have had no reason to make it easy. He would have had no reason to follow any rules but his own. So, where does that leave us? Can anyone crack Ricky McCormick's death codes? The honest answer, after more than 2 decades, is probably not. It's not impossible, of course. Maybe someday a brilliant cryptographer or a lucky amateur will have a flash of insight. Maybe they'll notice a pattern everyone else has missed. Maybe a new piece of information about Ricky's life will surface that provides the crucial context we need. But as time goes on, it seems more and more likely that the notes are a perfect, unbreakable enigma. They were born from a single, unique mind, and they died with that mind. They are a lock without a key. And in a way, that's what makes this story so captivating. It's not just an unsolved cipher, it's an unsolved life and an unsolved death. The 2 notes are the last testament of Ricky McCormick. They might contain the mundane details of his last days, a shopping list, a reminder to call someone. Or they might hold the key to his death, the name of his killer, the details of a meeting that went wrong, a final, desperate plea for help. They could be the most important evidence in a murder case, or they could be absolutely meaningless. We don't know. And the fact that we don't know, the fact that this man's final thoughts are written down yet completely inaccessible to us is profoundly human and deeply frustrating. The pieces of paper sit there, a silent challenge. They represent the limit of our understanding. They remind us that not every puzzle has a solution, not every question has an answer. Ricky McCormick took his secrets with him to the grave, leaving behind only this cryptic ghost of a message. And we are left to stare at it, to guess, and to wonder, forever locked out of the final chapter of his story. The code remains a monument to a mystery, a puzzle that may never be solved. And maybe that's the point, some things just don't make sense.